Hello and welcome to Rise Unwind. My name is Dan. You know, each and every week I try to talk to people from across the country about things we could do in your neighborhood. And on this week's show, we got this.
And there are a lot of fails along the way. You know, you don't always win.
Yeah, that's pretty much all my entire life right there. Brandi, all of that and more right here on Rise and Unwind. We've seen how quickly disasters can strike, and when they do, staying connected isn't just helpful, it can be life-saving. From wildfires to hurricanes, being prepared starts with communication, and that's something today's guest knows all about. Joining us is Craig Martinez, a former police chief and air marshal who now works as a national public safety strategist at T-Mobile. Welcome to the show, Craig. How are you?
Good morning, Dan. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you. When we're facing things like tornadoes, hurricanes, or wildfires, what are some of the simple things people could do to be a little better prepared?
Yeah, one of the things that I've had my family do is add any number that they may or may not need during an emergency. For instance, the water department, the streets department. Add that to their contacts in their cell phone. The other more important thing you can do is go into your cell phone settings and enable wireless emergency alerts. That way you can ensure that you're going to get those life-saving alerts from the community. And then the other thing you have is I always have a go bag handy, something that I can grab when I need to leave the house really quickly. Has all sorts of documents that I need. It has water. It has flashlights. It has non-perishable food. It has cell phone chargers, anything that I might need on the go.
During those critical moments when everyone's trying to call or text or even live stream at once, how are telecom companies like helping first responders stay connected?
Well, when you look at the nearly 200 million emergencies or 911 calls that police and fire departments across the country respond to every year, as a police chief in my 30 years of experience with military and law enforcement, whenever I was working a disaster or after it, doing a debrief, we were always talking about communications. It was very important. What went right and what went wrong. And one of the things that we've seen in first responder agencies right now, there's so many products, solutions, and services that are life-saving that require data, not just voice. And this is where we saw a gap. Because you have drones, you have body-worn cameras, cell phones, laptops, tablets, thermal imaging, asset and personnel tracking that all require data. And so T-Mobile has kind of stepped up and developed what's called T-Priority. It's a whole slice of our 5G network to deal with capacity. It can deal with slower speeds. And then we always give you the highest priority on our network with no ability to deprioritize. Because as you know, Dan, technology is evolving and we needed a solution that can evolve with it.
What can first responders do ahead of time to make sure their communications don't break down in an emergency?
Yeah, when you want to look at what first responders are doing, look at their wireless plan to make sure that they have the highest level of prioritization, regardless of what carrier you're on. Because this solution is available to millions of first responders across the country now. Whether you're part-time, full-time, or volunteer, we need you to stay connected during these emergencies.
With wildfire season getting closer, what should local communities and agencies be doing to try to get ready?
Yeah, absolutely. When you're talking about rural America, especially when those wildfires hit, they're hitting places where sometimes there's little or even no connectivity. And imagine a bunch of firefighters in a remote rural location with no ability to communicate outside of internally. Well, behind me, you see some of our deployable assets with our emergency management program that can deploy literally a cell phone tower on wheels. To an area where coverage just went down or to an area where there might be minimal or no coverage. But not only that, look at T-Satellite via Starlink, which is a text messaging service from your cell phone to a satellite orbiting the Earth, right? If you can see the sky, you can send a message out. As a matter of fact, we rolled this service out during Hurricanes Helene, Milton, and then the LA wildfires, where more than 500,000 text messages and 140 wireless emergency alerts went out and were received using this service.
And for people at home watching and want to take action, where's the best place to go for more information?
If you want more information, you can find everything you need to know, Dan, at tpriority.com.
Thanks for joining us. Have you ever had a great idea and thought, wait, should I be protecting this? Well, most people have heard of terms like trademark, copyright, and patent, but understanding what they mean and how they work, that's where things get a little bit tricky. So joining us today is Kristin Lurye with the Intellectual Property Owners Education Foundation, here to share how a new tool called IP Buddy is making all of this way easier for creators, inventors, and curious minds alike. Kristin, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, for folks who have heard of the term but don't quite get it, what exactly is intellectual property and what does it actually cover?
Yeah, intellectual property refers to creations of the mind. So think inventions, designs, artistic works. There's so much hard work that goes into these innovations and creations that you want to be able to protect them. And you can do that through patents, trademarks, copyrights, and trade secrets.
All right, tell me about IP Buddy. What does it do and how's it helping people protect their work?
Absolutely. IP Buddy is an AI-generated tool. It is a free resource for innovators, aspiring innovators, or people who are just curious to use to learn about intellectual property. Intellectual property is all around us, and people may not realize that. And there's so much hard work that goes into these innovations and creations that you want to make sure that you are educated on the best way to protect those innovations.
All right, there's a common belief that IP stuff is only for like big companies or like Disney when they're putting a new theme park ride. So is that true, or can everyday creators benefit from it too?
It is not true. Intellectual property is the foundation of innovation, whether you're a big company, a small business, or an individual. As I mentioned, intellectual property is all around us, and IP Buddy will be a great tool to learn more about the best way to protect that intellectual property. That's what IP Education Foundation is all about, is to promote the value of intellectual property.
So what made the IP OEF want to launch something like this in the first place, and what do you hope people take away from it?
As I mentioned, intellectual property is the foundation of innovation. IP protection allows innovators to protect their ideas, to generate funding, to collaborate with others. There was a recent survey done by the United States Intellectual Property Alliance that said that 70% of Americans cannot distinguish between the different forms of IP, patents, trademarks, copyrights, and trade secrets. So IP Education Foundation made this new free tool, IP Buddy, to provide free education to the innovator who's tinkering in their garage, coming up with the next big idea. Or maybe it's someone who's part of a STEM competition or an invention program to learn about intellectual property. This is an opportunity for these innovators, future innovators, to see firsthand, learn firsthand how intellectual property impacts their current situation, but also their potential career, their potential business.
And for anyone that's interested in exploring this for themselves, where should they go?
Please visit ipbuddy.ai to try it out, or you can visit ipoef.org.
Thanks for joining us, Kristin.
Thank you so much for having me.
It is one of the most misunderstood mental health conditions out there. And for families living with it, schizophrenia can feel overwhelming and isolating. But there is hope and treatment is evolving. So joining us today is Brooke Kempf, a psychiatric nurse practitioner with decades of experience, and Katie Hayes, a nurse and caregiver whose adult son is living with schizophrenia and thriving. Welcome to the show, you two. How are you?
Thank you. We're doing great.
Thank you.
All right, Brooke, let's kick this off with pretty much the basics. What exactly is schizophrenia and what kinds of symptoms usually show up?
Thank you, Dan, for having us and bringing attention to this, because there really is a stigma regarding schizophrenia. That's why I'm excited to be partnering with Johnson & Johnson to be here today to educate individuals on what schizophrenia is and what treatment options are out there. Schizophrenia affects about 2.8 million individuals just in the United States, and it's a very complex medical diagnosis. It contains positive symptoms like hearing things, seeing things, negative symptoms where patients might be more withdrawn, taking away from their baseline level of functioning, isolating, but also cognitive symptoms. So their thoughts aren't quite as organized. Their thought processes aren't quite as effective and as fast as they used to be. But there are effective treatment options out there.
Why is it so important to get treatment started early? And what can they, that first few years after diagnosis really mean for like someone's future?
It is. It's imperative to act quickly. We believe the first 3 to 5 years after receiving a diagnosis is the critical period. This is when the condition seems to progress most rapidly. So we want to intervene as quickly as possible to delay relapses occurring, hopefully keeping individuals out of the hospital. And we actually have research that shows utilizing long-acting injectables can delay time to relapse. Invega Sustenna actually, with this group of individuals, shows longer time to relapse than actually when you take oral antipsychotic medication.
And Katie, you've lived this firsthand. Can you share a bit about what it's like supporting your son through this diagnosis and some of the treatment?
Yes, I can. To begin with, in the beginning, when my son started experiencing psychosis and with his first psychotic break, it was like living in a nightmare. Fear and anxiety, that was paralytic at times. I had no one to talk to who could relate. A lot of self-blame, blaming myself. Is this something that I could have prevented, as a parent? Blaming drugs and alcohol. And the most important thing that I realized did was start educating myself about schizophrenia and its symptoms. There I learned through my education was the worst symptom they can have is they lack insight into their illness, so they don't know that they're sick. And their reality in their head is completely different from your reality. Then from there, I joined a support network with caregivers. And I learned about long-acting injectables, the Invega Sustenna. The oral medications just weren't working for my son. And if you don't think you're sick, why are you going to take a medication every day? So from there, we talked to his treatment team and his healthcare provider about the long-acting injectable. And it provided my son with the independence to let his brain heal and start moving on and reaching his goals in life.
And I know it wasn't really an overnight process. What helped you and your son finally land a treatment plan that actually you felt like worked?
I would have to say, number one, the first thing I had to do as a caregiver and a mother was learn to listen to him and what he was feeling was happening to him, and patience. We had to have patience with each other, and I think that probably was the biggest thing. And you're right; it is a terrible, very, very long journey with lots of bumps in the road, and I had to learn to sit next to him. And as I've said, the less I said, the more he did. So with this long-acting injectable Invega Sustenna, he was able to organize his thoughts and organize himself. I didn't have to do that anymore for him.
Brooke, Katie, thanks for joining me this morning. Where can we go for more information if our audience wants to learn more?
We encourage everybody to reach out to their primary care provider, their healthcare professional. You can reach out to treatyourschizophrenia.com to learn more about the diagnosis and learn more about these treatment options.
Thank you, too, for joining me this morning.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
It's called NF1-PN, a rare genetic disorder that causes tumors along the nerves and can lead to some serious pain and mobility problems. So today we're joined by Dr. Angela Hirbe, a leading expert from Washington University, and Austin Fields, a pastor and patient advocate living with the condition. Welcome to the show, you two.
Thanks for having us. We're really excited to partner with SpringWorks Therapeutics to kind of bring more attention to neurofibromatosis, plexiform neurofibromas.
Yeah, thank you.
Dr. Hirbe, what exactly is NF1-PN and what are some of the symptoms that people do experience?
Yeah, so neurofibromatosis type 1 or NF1 is a genetic condition. It's actually the most common inherited tumor predisposition syndrome. So it affects about 1 in 2,500 people. Patients with NF1 are at risk for developing these plexiform neurofibromas or PNs. And these are tumors that arise among multiple nerve roots. They can happen anywhere in the body, and they tend to cause a significant amount of pain. They can also be very disfiguring. And then, depending on the location, they can also sometimes cause organ damage.
And Austin, you've been living with this since childhood. How has it affected your life over the years?
Yeah, so I was diagnosed at a very young age, and even at a young age, I had multiple surgeries. Prime age, when you're supposed to be learning how to swim, ride a bike, I was pretty much bedridden because I had 2 surgeries in the same year. The first one they had to remove it because it was growing towards my spine, was the size of a foam football. They couldn't remove all of it because it would paralyze me. The second time it was the same case, but it was only the size of a golf ball that time. As I progressed and got older, there was a lot of times where I couldn't do things, kids my age, because of the pain or the mobility issues I was having because of my tumors. And then as I got older, I tried doing more things, and I wanted to really go into the military, but with my tumors, that was not possible. So I tried a career out in law enforcement. Unfortunately, my pain got worse, and I was unable to continue and further my career. So I ended up actually finding a clinical trial that worked out great for me. And within my first year of that, I ended up with terrific results, to where finding out that it shrank my tumor 57%.
Dr. Hirbe, what options do patients have to help manage this condition today?
Yeah. So first of all, every patient is different. So it's really important to talk to your physician to kind of figure out what treatment option might be best. Historically, we were really limited to surgery for these tumors. But as was the case with Austin, most of the time you can't remove the entire tumor. And even when you can remove part of it, more than half of the time the tumor grows back. In 2020, there was one medication approved for children with NF1-PN. Then excitingly, in February of this year, we finally had the first FDA-approved medication for both adults and children with NF1-PN. And that's a medication called mirdametinib, or Gomekli. And the medication has been shown to shrink these tumors significantly and also reduce the pain that patients are having. Every medication comes with side effects. The most common side effects with this medication are some GI toxicity, so things like nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, and then a rash being the most common side effect.
We're running out of time. Where can our viewers go for more information if they want to learn more?
Yeah, so they can go to gomekli.com. That's GOMEKLI.com. And then also the Children's Tumor Foundation website is a great place for resources for patients.
Thanks for joining me.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much.
It's called Caregiving, a new PBS documentary from Bradley Cooper and Weta that puts the spotlight on 40 million Americans taking care of loved ones every day. So joining us are Jessica Guthrie, a caregiver featured in the film, and Deborah Barrett from Otsuka America Pharmaceutical, a lead sponsor helping bring these stories to light. Welcome to the show, you two. How are you?
Thank you for having us.
Doing great.
Deborah, this documentary hits hard in kind of the best way. Why was it important for Otsuka to bring back a project like this?
Caregiver stories need to be shared and they need to be heard, and that's what this film is about. Otsuka is a healthcare company first and foremost, and caregivers are a critical part of our healthcare system. They're essential to a loved one's healthcare journey, and they're oftentimes critical to determine health outcomes. We thought it would be really important as a company that cares about caregivers and the patients that they're taking care of to help elevate this issue. It also comes at a really timely moment for us when we're having a conversation about a national caregiving crisis. There was a study out last week from Columbia University that showed how nearly half of the U.S. states are on the precipice of a crisis in terms of caregiving. So the time has never been better for us to be talking about this issue and thinking about what we can do.
And Jessica, you've been a full-time caregiver for over a decade. What led you to share your story in really such a public way?
My mom was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's disease. She was 66 and I was 26 years old. So I'm a young millennial solo caregiver trying to navigate my career, all the while being thrust into caregiving, let alone understanding something like dementia. And so I wanted to share my story publicly because I was like, there's got to be other people who are on this journey, who understand how to care for their loved one, but also like, what does it mean to be a young person and caring for a loved one? And so I found by sharing on social media, there's people around the world who are navigating dementia. There's people who are just like, I'm so glad you're sharing because I see my story in yours. And I feel so connected and affirmed and seen. And so that's been the power of me sharing, but also why I continue to share for the people who are coming up after me and caring for their loved ones.
And Deborah, there's a lot of companies that are still trying to figure this out. How can employers try to better support their workers who are also caregivers?
It's so important, and I think we have an important role to play. The way that employers support the health and well-being of their employees through paid benefits, through training, through assistance, through creating a network is exactly what needs to be done for caregivers. I'm proud to work for a company, Otska, that provides paid time off for caregiving, that provides a program that provides information and assistance. And I really would love to see that, in more places of employment. I would also just make a pitch for corporate leaders being advocates for caregivers and working with policymakers in their community to try to get the sorts of policies and changes, whether it's financial assistance, logistical assistance, respite care, et cetera, that are really going to make a difference for this community.
And Jessica, based on what you've lived through, what are some of the biggest obstacles caregivers face every day?
Oh, I think the first is honestly just education and training. For me, navigating Alzheimer's disease, it's like what to expect, what questions to ask, what resources are available, what should be happening when, right? Caregivers are jumping into this ill-equipped, unprepared, and don't really know how to navigate the system to support their people. I think the second thing is honestly just support and connection. So many caregivers, including myself, feel isolated, feel alone, feel like their people have abandoned them. And so how do we make sure they get that people wrap their arms around them? I got so excited. Then the third thing, honestly, is just support with their corporate environments, working full time, caring for their loved ones, ensuring that they can support their families, all the while caring for their people with dignity and respect.
All right, so where can people watch the documentary and pretty much connect with more resources?
And we hope people do watch the documentary. It's available right now, streaming on pbs.org and at the PBS app. And we're looking forward to a premiere on PBS June 24th. I would also share with folks to go to our website at Otska, OTSUKA, -us.com/caregiver as a place for more resources, information, and a connection to this film.
Thank you two for joining me this morning.
Thank you.
Do you ever wonder what's really inside all of those old, dusty storage lockers? Is it trash? Is it treasure? Is it something worse? The hit 80 series Storage Wars is back with bigger lockers, bolder finds, and fiercer bidding. And one of the show's fan favorites is joining us to preview the new season. Brandi Passante is here, longtime buyer, savvy negotiator, and honestly, a Storage Wars icon. Let's welcome her to the show. Brandi, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. Good morning.
All right, for folks that are haven't watched this for a while, what is new this season on Storage Wars?
We have an hour long this season, which, there's a lot more chance for us to, highlight, all the background stuff that we're doing and all the silly stuff, that you never get to see. So that's exciting. We also went to an estate sale this season. That was a lot of fun, especially for me because I won big. Dave Hester's back this season. That's not very exciting. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm excited about it. Season 16. So that's a little crazy.
Yeah, that's kind of a crazy big number for that. You guys have been around, what was it, 2020? No, 2010, right?
Yeah, we kind of started shooting in 2009, and yeah. So it aired, shortly after that.
So what is like the biggest thrill for you when you're sizing up a locker? Is it the mystery, some of the potential profit, or maybe just beating Dave Hester?
I think more than anything, if I like a unit, it's the element of winning that. And it's also, the potential to make money, I mean, at the end of the day, that's what I'm there for. And, it is always kind of fun. I do get to learn about, obscure items that I would have never known anything about. And, I found quite a few and unique items over the seasons, or over the years. And, sometimes I fail big and sometimes I win big, but, the longer I've done it, the less fails that there are. You just live and learn.
In over 16 seasons of buying lockers, selling lockers, and chasing dollar bills, what is like some of the crazier? I guess everybody asks you this, but what are some of the crazy things, or some of the most memorable things, or some of the most heartfelt things that you've found within these lockers?
In the beginning, they'd be like journals and things like that. And I would just kind of get wrapped up and read these things. And now I don't do that as much. It takes a lot of time out of it, and it's, kind of a time waster. But I've also found, before I even started the show, it was like one of my first units that I bought. There were these old photos. I mean, this is what I always kind of go back to. They were black and white photos from the 1800s, and they were of dead people. And it was, I guess, tradition to, capture their soul or something along those lines. And they kind of gave me the creeps. And I held on to them for, a minute, and I ended up throwing them out. And I found out later they were worth a lot of money, and I shouldn't have done that. But, it goes with anything in this business. You kind of have to live and learn, learn your lesson, do a little more research.
Not to give anybody advice on buying and selling lockers, but if anybody was interested in taking this up as a hobby or maybe small business, what are some of the first steps to that you would assume to give them as a suggestion, or say, don't do this, this is terrible, don't do this at all? What are your thoughts?
I would say don't do it. And that's what I kind of say as a rule. I mean, it's not an easy job. I know we make it look easy, but we've all been doing it a long time. It's backbreaking work. It's moving day every single day. It's cleaning out disgusting things, and sometimes it's full of dirt and dust and sometimes there's critters, and it's not easy. You have to find a place to store all of the things. You have to go to the dump to throw away the things that you can't sell, and then you have to find an outlet to sell the items that you are keeping. So it's a difficult job. It is not easy, and there are a lot of fails along the way. You don't always win.
Yeah, that's pretty much all my entire life right there. Brandi Passante, thanks for joining me this morning. You can check out the new season of Storage Wars at 9 p.m. Eastern and Pacific on A&E, and then they stream the episodes the very next day online. Brandi, thanks for hanging out with me this morning.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
And that is it for Rise and Unwind. I want to thank you for tuning in and checking out the show. If you actually want to be on the show, go to our website. That's riseunwindtv.com. Fill out the form, send it our way, and maybe you could be on a future episode. Make sure you follow us on YouTube, like, comment, share, subscribe, all that other good stuff. And until next week, that was Rise and Unwind.